Hello, everyone. Welcome to While the Ghostlight Burns with RS Theatrics. I'm Sarah Lynn Holt, the Artistic Director here at RS. If you're not familiar with us, in normal times, we are a small professional theater company operating out of the Kranzberg Arts Foundation in St. Louis, Missouri. Our mission is to produce shows that have never been professionally produced in the St. Louis metro area with the goal of introducing new voices to important conversations in our community. Obviously, that's not something that's happening much in 2020, but just because the shows aren't happening doesn't mean the conversations can't, and that's where While the Ghostlight Burns comes in. While the ghostlight is illuminating our stage, we are still having these important conversations and still introducing you to people who are participating in them. So today, we are going to be talking to Darrious Varner. Darrious is a St. Louis born and raised artist. He's been performing since middle school. After a short stint at the School of Art Institute in Chicago, he decided theater was what he was born to do. For the past 7 years, he has graced stages on both a community and professional level across the city. A Break from the Stage birthed the world premiere of My Infinite Sadness, written, directed, and produced by Darrious. Darrious is a champion for queer BIPOC and will continue to invoke change and prosperity in the performing arts world. And here he is.
Hello.
Welcome to While the Ghostlight Burns.
Thank you for having me.
So something we've been talking to all of the artists we have on here. To introduce you, I just wanted to hear a little bit about what your version of practicing your art looks like, whether that's on a day-to-day basis or on more of a yearly, monthly scale, whatever that looks like to you. What is your process?
I think it's taken so many different forms over the past few years that it really changes depending on what role I'm playing. It's like if I'm directing, I'm very script focused, but I also really like to interact with the actors in a way that I haven't had directors interact with me before. Sometimes, like, I want to be a part of the character development because I want to feel the characters off the stage as well as on the stage. And then if I'm acting, I gotta learn my lines. I can't do anything. It is true what they say. You can't do anything on the stage until you learn your lines. And I'm like, I don't know. But truly, it all boils down to the role I'm playing and honestly how involved with the show I am. If it's just something that I'm doing because a friend asked or doing because, yeah, sure, I'll do this. Why not? I love to do stuff like that. Just like one-off stuff. Or if it's something like My Infinite Sadness where it was like my story on the stage, it really bounces back and forth. I hope that answers your question.
So speaking of My Infinite Sadness, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about the journey that piece took. What inspired you to work on it in the first place, and what it ended up becoming?
So I actually really love telling this story because it's like one of my crowning achievements in life. At 27, having written and produced my own play is like, what? But it actually started with Shannon Geyer, who was another local theater maker who I absolutely adore. She reached out to me and asked me to write a short piece for a project she was working on. And I was like, okay, sure. I had not written anything per se at that point, just like small stuff here and there, but never anything that I was like trying to get produced or, even plays. And I wrote it, and it's this piece that is essentially broken into 2 scenes in the finished product called Do You Miss Me? And it's a 2-character scene, just like the play is a 2-character play. And it's cyclical, so it kind of starts and ends the same way, but the characters flip their roles. And so I wrote it and I sent it to her and she loved it. And I was like, you know what, Shannon, I feel more from this. I feel like there's something below the surface of this little 15-minute piece that I wrote that I need to write. Like I need to get it out. And so I sat with it for several months, almost a year. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I added things, changed things. And I wanted to write this piece that could be performed separately. So each scene can be performed as kind of its own standalone talking point or moment or what have you. But together, it's a cohesive story of two people. One person is me, the physical person, and the second person is you, the physical representation of depression, which is kind of like how I handle my depression. I personify it, I give it a name. It's just depression right now, but I give it a name, I give it a face, and I'm like, you don't have the power over me today. And I wanted to write a play that did that because it's not something I had seen before. And I finished it and I sent it to Shannon and I was like, hey, I finished this. Will you just read it and make sure it's like any good? And I had a bunch of friends read it, and it ended up being a very cathartic and beautiful experience to get to produce it with all of my friends in tow. Like everybody that was involved is like a very close, very dear friend of mine. So it was really an incredible experience.
So was that original concept of this play addressing depression specifically and mental health in general, did that come from you, or was that something that was sort of inherent in the ask from Shannon?
No, that came from me. That because when I wrote the initial "Do You Miss Me" scene, I wanted it to be like in the subconscious, as if there were two people having a conversation in the same head. And that's what depression feels like. I know a lot of people struggle with depression like myself, and that's what it feels like to me sometimes, is battling with this other person in my head. And I really wanted to portray that. And yeah, that was the craziest aspect of all of it, was that concept that came to me and being able to portray that in such a way that people related to it.
And so the piece from there, after you decided, yes, there is something here, this should be on stage, was the next step Fringe then?
No, actually. So I produced the show on, and this is, I'm going to get real philosophical here for a minute. My birthday is very significant to me outside of the fact that it's my birthday. My birthday's in January. It's the beginning of the year. I always do like a cleanse into the new year to kind of reset my energy and get myself on the right track to be successful for the next year. And significant things always happen to me on my birthday. I don't know what it is. It just is like a weird thing of the universe being like, you made it another year. Here's a reward for you. So I went about trying to produce it. I reached out to a bunch of venues. The Chapel was the first place I thought of because I was like, it's free. So I reached out to the Chapel. They didn't have any dates in June when I was planning to produce it, but they had the week of my birthday available. And I was like, okay, I hear you, universe. I got you. And so then from there, I cast my friend Elizabeth McCormick and L'Oreal Stevenson, or Costello now, sorry, who are wonderfully talented performers, and they were the first people to read the full play out loud. And I was like, these are the two voices I need to have on this. So yeah, after we had the read through, set it up, I had Jazz Tucker as my production manager, and a friend of mine, Jeremy Schnelt, who was another theater maker, as my assistant director, and Tina Twardowski as my lighting and sound operator. And I like put this ragtag team of people together, and we produced it in January. January 12th was opening night of 2017. What is this, 2020? Or was it 2018? 2018, I believe.
What do you mean anymore?
I don't even know. It was 2018, January 12th of 2018. Opening night was my birthday. So that was the first iteration of it.
Okay, I think I had it flipped. I thought Fringe came first. Because, again, time.
It's an illusion, truly.
The Chapel version is the one that I saw. So you did do it at Fringe, am I?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did do it at Fringe. No, yeah, you don't have that confused. We did do it at Fringe.
So was that the same team, or did you have some?
I dialed it back just a little bit because you don't need all the like extra hands at Fringe. Like they give you a tech, And since we had done the show before, I kind of had a vision of how I wanted to do it. But I did have to swap out Liz for Brie Love, which was a very welcome swap. I was like, I get to have Brie Love in my show? Yes. But only because, not only because, but Liz was unable to perform for Fringe because she's a firefighter. So that things happen.
Yeah, no, there was no problem with Liz.
Exactly. No problem at all. There was no inner nothing. It was just a conflict of time. But so it was Brie and L'Oreal instead of Liz and L'Oreal.
Okay. So you've always had a female cast. Mm-hmm. Is this something that's more flexible in your mind, or is that sort of where it settles for you?
Well, my initial thought when I wrote the play was that it could be cast anyway, and I still feel that way. But upon finishing it, the last scene, which is both the last scene of the show and the last scene that I wrote, is a spoken word piece called Catharsis. And it involves some language that Caucasian people cannot necessarily say, which can be swapped out, or it can be said it's a play. I don't ever have an issue with it in a play, but I know that a lot of people get uncomfortable about that. But it really feels very Black to me, and maybe it's because it's my story, but I initially wrote it to be anybody, no matter what age, race, gender, none of that matters. But upon producing it, I felt like it feels very Black to me, if that makes sense.
And that's something that's very important to you, is bringing the message of awareness of mental health and care for mental health, not just to a very broad general audience, which of course you also want that, but particularly to bring that into the Black community.
Yes, absolutely. Growing up, I had a very strong support system, and my mom and family believed that mental health is important, and they put my mental health first when I was going through my mental health crisis. So I had that foundation to stand on while I was going through my crisis, and I want to provide that for other people like me, like Black men and Black women who don't, and Black in between everybody, who don't have that foundation, because in the Black community, it is a lot shunned and like frowned upon, swept under the rug. Like, we don't really talk about it. We don't really address it. It's like, either you're crazy or you're not crazy. And sometimes it's like, well, no, this person is not crazy. They just have XYZ mental health problem, and they just need a doctor or a therapist or medicine or something to help them. So I am working very hard to bring that awareness into my community.
And I'll pause for a moment here and make sure that everyone knows neither Darrious nor myself are trained mental health professionals. Nope. We are having this conversation as people who would like to discuss awareness, not specifics of treatment.
Yes.
And we're merely approaching this as concerned artists and decent people, not as none of our recommendations are how you personally should go get treated or how you should try to treat someone else in a medical sense.
Yes. So. And to that point, it was very important for me to have an actual mental health professional at the show every night to, because it was very triggering, even for me, and it's my story, and I lived it. But I knew that there were moments in the show, specifically the pendulum scene, that would trigger people, that would make them uncomfortable. So Jamie Linson was there every night to do like a talk back with us and to give actual credible mental health expert information. Like, it is so important to me that people get the right kind of information. And to me, theater is the vessel. And if I can bridge the gap between mental health and theater, call me the Avatar.
And no matter how much we try to predict how people might react to something, because you might think that that is the scene that obviously might trigger somebody, but it could be something totally different that you never thought of. And having that, those connections that you can make in the moment to get someone the help they need, very important whenever we're wading into these waters. So you've had you've had several audiences for this piece. You had the initial audience, which was just the people that you were reaching out to personally. And then you had your audience for the chapel show, and you had your audience at Fringe. Have you seen a difference in how those different groups have reacted? Because for your chapel show, since that was self-produced, it was you getting the word out, you and your team. For Fringe, the part of the appeal of Fringe is that you have all these different shows that are happening at the same time and hopefully feeding audiences into each other so that people are encouraged to go try something they might not know anything about.
Right.
Did you see a marked difference in how people were reacting?
I don't know that I saw necessarily a difference. I got a lot of the biggest response was, wow, I didn't ever think to put it that way. Or from people who don't necessarily suffer with, mental illness or mental health struggles, putting into words and making a connection for their friends who might struggle, or for a family member they may have lost to it, or it was either the people who struggle very deeply with it resonated very, very much with it, or the people who didn't struggle were like, wow, this makes sense, and now I feel better about this thing that happened, or I can have a little bit more closure with this thing that happened. I will say that the first round of audiences were more Black, and there were a lot more Black people in those audiences, and that response was probably the most powerful to me, because it was like, wow, this is something that I've dealt with and I didn't even know. So to know that I brought that awareness was just pretty incredible.
So when obviously with this piece, you being the creator, you had a unique insight into where this came from, and how it could be portrayed on stage responsibly. Where do you recommend that people come at this if they are portraying, if they're doing a show that deals with mental health, that they are not? And maybe they do have personal experience, maybe they don't, but it's not their story. What are the best ways for people to engage with that material?
I would say reach out to any of your friends who are outspoken about it. I invite anybody into my inbox to ask me questions and, say this thing, this is a misconception I had. Will you either debunk or, and I'm not the end all be all to anything, but I can give you my insight. So I always suggest to reach out to the community that you're looking to, that you're trying to produce this show for, as like the first step. And then online research is definitely very important. Even I had to research for this show, and it's my story. And I'm like, let me make sure that I'm portraying this not just from my point of view, because you still want to encompass all people, all lines of sight, all points of view. So definitely do your research, and definitely make sure you are taking notes, reaching out to if you're doing mental health professionals are really usually pretty willing to open up to you about, okay, well, this is how I handle this, and blah, 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 blah. And then as a theater maker, I would reach out to other theaters who specify with this, or who do shows or have done shows that deal with the topic. They have the experience, they know what they're doing, they've done this before, and it's great to have that, well, this is how the audience responded as a theater maker.
And it's something I think I've noticed is there are portrayals of mental health in theater that are, as your show was, very in-depth. They're looking, that's the point of the show, or at least a major point of the show. Something like, say, Next to Normal, where your main character is engaging directly with their own mental illness and the people around them. It's about how they relate to that. But we also do see quite a bit of sort of incidental portrayal. The first thing that leaped to mind was the scene in Sweeney Todd when they go to the mental asylum, and there's just basically a chorus of people who are asylum inmates 1 through 14 or whatever.
Yeah.
So is there basically, is there a part too small, or are we, do we need to do that digging in for even those sort of one-off characters?
I don't know. It's such a hard thing with that particular side of it, because the one side of me, the mentally ill side of me, is like, oh, you better portray it right. You better do it right. Don't make a character out of my struggle. But also, I think we waver on that line sometimes of it being entertainment, and sometimes it does have to be entertainment, and sometimes you do have to get a laugh out of your own mental illness. So I think it really depends on the part. I think it depends on if you're doing a next to normal, or course asylum member number 54 in Sweeney Todd. I think you have to really judge based on whether it's for the entertainment value or if it's for the real serious education of people in the audience. But also, don't go overboard with the entertainment value. Don't make it like super crazy, because that's just insulting.
Do you have a thought on the sort of armchair psychoanalysis of characters? Like, Shakespeare is the obvious. Everybody wants to talk about who's a narcissist, who's bipolar. Is there any value in that, do you think? Or
I don't. I think there's value if you are genuinely trying to educate. Because narcissism is a tricky one, just because that's cool. But sometimes it's like, what are we doing? I'm sure Shakespeare had some point or something, but sometimes I do believe that sometimes people dive a little too deep into things, and like sometimes it's just this. Sometimes the person is just crazy, and it's for the fun of it.
I think ultimately, if it's not spelled out in the text, what you have to work with is the text.
Yes.
You don't get to wave a diagnosis at the audience and be like, let this inform how you're watching me.
Right, exactly. I'm gonna play this character schizophrenic. It's like, okay, well, hold on there, partner.
So do you are there additional factors you think need to be brought in when we're looking at sort of an intersectional audience, whether we're talking about addressing mental health within the Black community or within the queer community?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Are there any like additional factors that you need to be aware of when it's sort of an intersectional?
Got you. Yeah. I think one thing you always have to kind of be cognizant of is what exactly you're trying to say and who you're saying it to, and not hammering people over the head with just for example with My Infinite Sadness, not being like, this is about Black people. Like, I at the end of the day, yes, the show is about being Black with mental illness, but it also is to like, everybody can get something from this. And I think being specific about hey, this is a Black show, absolutely 100%. But something like mental health is so all-encompassing that you can't help but have everybody come in and try and take a piece of what you're giving. So I think being a little more inclusive with all types of shows, with plays that are about queer nature, being about being queer and about being Black and queer and mental health. And I think we just all need to be more inclusive about everything, all across the board. But everything is not for everybody.
So, we've been talking about portraying mental illness when it's the subject. But obviously mental illness doesn't get left at the door when you're doing any play.
Yeah.
Are there ways that you think we can be taking better mental health care while creating theater? And I'll start by asking about theater artists.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the year leading up to writing My Infinite Sadness, I think some of the time while I was writing it, I was in like waves and waves of depression that were not stopping, and which is probably why I was so inspired to write it. And I found that I was piling work upon myself to cover up the fact that I was feeling so mentally unwell. And I know a lot of theater artists do that to themselves. They're like, well, if I'm working, I'm feeling good. If I'm doing this show and this show and this show and this show, if I am staying busy, I'm feeling good. And we don't take time to step back and really assess not just our mental health, but our physical health as well. Because, you know, we work long hours when we're doing rehearsals. It's tough stuff. And some shows are more physical than other shows. And the emotional strain of it all is a lot. A lot of people don't take that into consideration. And I'm talking about people outside of the theater world. That we are really, truly putting our emotions out there, it's raw. So we definitely, as theater artists, need to stop and check in with ourselves. And if you're not feeling this show, if you have even an inkling of not wanting to do something, it's okay to say no. That every theater artist that is listening to me, it is okay to say no. You will feel so much better and so much more powerful within yourself if you are like, okay, I need to take a minute to breathe. I need to reassess. I need to maybe work a few more hours at work so I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. And I need to say no to this show right now. And you can say yes the next time. It's okay.
If I can ask you to put a little more of your story in that, you a few years ago.
Yeah, 3 years. I will say 3 years ago is when the writing process started. So 2 years ago, when I was 25, is when the show was produced for timeline purposes.
So, but a few years ago, and you didn't relate it at the time, at least, to My Infinite Sadness. You you said that you were going to stop acting.
Yes, and I did.
And you got, if I'm recalling correctly, at least from what I saw on social media, you got quite a bit of pushback.
I got a lot of pushback. Oh man, I forgot all about that. Yeah, I made a whole long post about it and being like, my mental health is more important, and not even trying to be. Number one, my social media is very transparent. I'm not one of those people that tries to pretend like, hey girl, I'm having a good day every day. Like, no, I'm having a bad day. This is what's happening, and I'm gonna talk about it because I'm trying to personally purge social media of all of the BS and like wade through it. So yeah, I posted this long thing on Facebook about not acting and how I felt about it, and everybody was like, but you're so good. I appreciate it. I truly, to the bottom of my heart, as uncomfortable as I am taking compliments, I fully appreciate it. But at that time, I had to be like, no, I cannot.
And I think from what I understood of what you were saying, you were that you've taken a journey through theater and you've landed on acting was not your final destination.
Yeah,
it's not that you got bored or something. Like you discovered that you wanted to pour your creative energy in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, I had gotten worn out. It started to feel like work, and it stopped being fun. It stopped being home. I didn't feel at home on stage like I did, when I first started acting.
It seemed like a lot of people were worried that your decision was more a result of you getting discouraged. We all know that actors go through periods of time where there's just nothing happening.
Yeah.
Opportunities dry up. And that can be a very legitimately discouraging thing. And sometimes what people do need is that little push from other people to say, no, keep going. So it seemed like some people were, I think people were being genuinely good-hearted about their reaction.
Yeah.
In your case, it was not a call for...
I was not asking for support. No, I appreciate the support fully. It was one of the few times where I posted something like that where I wasn't hoping to get some kind of encouragement. But I was coming off of like 13 months of performing and getting paid to perform. Like I was on a run. I was doing very well. I was, being cast in all kinds of shows and doing things that I never expected to do. And it just was like, all right, this is not it anymore. I'm not having fun. I'm not, I'm working. I feel like I am at my restaurant job and I am in the weeds. And I wasn't taking care of my mental health. And it all boiled down to acting is not good for my mental health right now. That's not to say I won't come back to it, but.
And I think that's another thing that people can be very aware of is that just because at one point in your life you made something your goal, it doesn't mean that has to be, if a different goal presents itself.
Yeah, and as creatives, exactly. As creatives, we dabble in so many different things. At that point, I had started writing music, and music has been a passion of mine my entire life. But I left it somewhere. And once I found it again, I was like, oh man, this feels good. This feels like home. And like writing and directing and producing, all of those things felt good. They stopped feeling like work and started feeling like home again. That's the best way to put it, is I felt at home. And yeah, we're allowed to change and grow. And I still do little one-off things every now and then. I'm not totally just, no, I will never act ever. Like if a friend reaches out to me and wants me to do a show, I will if it's not too much of a commitment. But I had to do what was best for me. I had to be my happiest.
And yeah, I think that's flexibility is something that as artists we need to
definitely teach ourselves a little bit more of that.
Yeah, and theater can be such a it can be difficult, and it rewards people who are very focused, very determined, but that can lead to this sort of tunnel vision where you sometimes don't even realize that what you're doing right now isn't serving you.
And that's exactly where I was. I had tunnel vision like crazy. I was like, man, all these people are contacting me, and it feels good when you're in that golden hour of being, quote, a hot commodity in the community, in the acting world. You feel good. All these people are telling you you're so great, and everybody wants to work with you, and it soups you up in the right way because it builds your confidence. And in my case, it made me confident enough to produce my own show. I was like, all right, here I am.
Saying no is scary.
Yes.
We're told that just like if someone's giving you an opportunity, do it.
You just have to take it.
So with my own path, I started out, I started out like everyone does with whatever tiny thing will get you in there. But a lot of my early career was stage management, and I went to school for directing, and I came back and I kept stage managing. Stage managing served me well for a long time. It introduced me to all sorts of directors. It let me closely observe their process and utilize a lot of different techniques, meet a ton of people. But then I realized when people started getting surprised that that wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my career, that something needed to happen. And it was the scariest thing, but I started when I was offered stage management jobs, I started saying, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I got a degree in directing and I want to direct.
And you're a fabulous director, by the way.
But
just to put that out there for everybody, you're a fabulous director.
Thank you. And, but we'll say, as scary as saying no was, the result was not, oh, well, goodbye then. It was, let me think about whether we have any opportunities for that.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't handing me the keys to a main stage show immediately, but it was, well, would you want to assist and direct? Or we have this scene for a community project that someone needs to direct. Can we see what you can do with that? So being able to interrogate what's going on around you,
Mm-hmm.
if it's serving you still, and taking that big leap to say, no, it's not, and we need to redirect, I think is, and now is a perfect opportunity to be making those assessments for everyone.
Yes, fully. We've had 3 months of not being able to do nothing. And in those 3 months, I did start to miss theater a lot. I did start to kind of miss acting. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I still stand firm in my decision. I'm still like, I'm good.
I definitely miss theater. I was describing a show yesterday to my partner and started crying. And was like, I need to see something on stage. No. I need to pour my emotions into characters. But so yes, our mental health care probably looks a little different right now than it does when we're running around doing, but we probably have particularly performers, designers, people whose work has definitely slowed down, at least. Perhaps the teeniest, tiniest of silver linings, which can be very hard to see if you're worried about where your paychecks are not coming from right now, is you can really figure out this is what you want to do. So you, to go in a slightly different direction, you mentioned having a mental health professional at your shows out of concern for your audience. Are there other ways we need to be cognizant of the fact that the audience is bringing in their own mental health, not necessarily illnesses, but
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The original ending of the show was very traumatic. It originally ended with the pendulum scene. And when I was like shopping it around to my friends, they're like, you cannot end it like this. And I, being the obstinate Capricorn that I am, was like, it's art. It has to mean something. But it could still mean something with a different ending. And I did step back and take into consideration, okay, well, the audience is going to be probably just like, what even did I just watch? We have to think ahead to the audience reaction. And there's, outside of having a mental health professional there's not a lot we can do to, but as performers, we can put, as much positive energy into the negativity of a scene or a show as possible. And, after the show, I've seen shows. There was one show that I saw that I almost wanted to walk out of because it was so heavy and it like triggered me so much. But of course, I had friends with me and they were like, you're good. It's fine. Everything's okay. And I was like, I'm not okay. But we just have to be cognizant of what the show is saying and not barreling it into the audience. Like one of the reasons I got into theater was because it made me feel better. And then it transformed into this, I want to make other people feel better. And I think we need to never lose sight of making other people feel better, even though we might be doing a show that is heavy or hard or sad or whatever you want to call it.
I think trusting the audience too is particularly early in people's career as directors or producers, I think there's there might be a tendency to decide how you want the audience to feel and then try to ding, 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 ding. When I was in school, I was working on a show with a student director, and the director had the idea that maybe to to drive home the themes of discomfort and both physical and mental for the audience, he would, instead of having theatrical seating, he'd just have risers, and people would sit directly on the floor with no backs, no arms. They're forced into this sort of situation that's similar to the actors. And the directing advisor at the time gave one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten, which was, do you not trust that you can do that without making them physically uncomfortable? They don't want to be physically uncomfortable in the theater.
Yep.
And it's so simple.
Nobody wants to be physically uncomfortable.
You close your audience off when you try to steer them.
Yeah.
Obviously. And I mean, the student director did not go in that direction.
Good.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I think we can trust the material, we can trust the work, and get the audience there.
And you can trust your actors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a pivot question, but it's something that it's not directly, I guess there's some of it in theater. But having just had Halloween and having to do Halloween, in the confines of a house,
mm-hmm.
was looking at lots of different horror and spooky media.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about, because one of my projects for myself has been to be more aware of being sensitive to mental health, trying to take things like calling things crazy out of my vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the first time I really thought about the fact that we know that mental illness sometimes causes people to have violent behaviors, unpredictable behaviors,
mm-hmm.
things that are legitimately and validly frightening for people who might be dealing with them.
Mm-hmm.
For both the person who's experiencing it personally and the people who are interacting with that person.
Right.
And that means they are a very tempting trope to plug into horror stories. So do you have thoughts on if we can tell those stories where, the villain is the psychotic killer escaped from the asylum, or is there a middle ground where we can have some of that, but not quite pushed in that far direction?
Yes, I think we can tell those stories without it. And I think a lot of times it's much more interesting when the killer isn't, there isn't a reason mentally why they're killing. Sometimes it's more scary that they're just a killer. Like, this person is just a killer. Like, what? That's crazy. That's crazy. But, I think, and don't get me wrong, I love my Halloween movies, where the killer's a psycho and it's scary. But I do think we need to kind of temper that, because I see it bleeding into the real world, art imitating life, where every time somebody goes and kills somebody, the first thing they do is plead insanity. And it's like, no, you're just a killer. Like, there's no insanity. You have no history of mental health problems. Not all people with mental health issues go around killing people. And I do think a lot that sometimes horror movies have put that stigma on people with mental health. So yes, please, let's tell some more scary stories without mental health crises, please.
So, is there a place for the narrative of one that I watched recently, where the entire spooky or horror or unsettling aspect of the story is this person mentally ill, or are these things really happening?
Oh, I would love that. There's a movie like that. What movie is that?
You know, there's I think it was involved in The Haunting of Hill House, the recent.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
There's some question of, is this
Is this
mental illness
real?
or is this haunting?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I thought that was a great series. I thought it did a lot of things really right with scaring me and kind of making me second guess myself a little bit. And I think that's the thing with horror movies is that they plant the seed in your head about what could happen, what could really happen. Um, and I think that's the narrative we should take. That more are the blur the lines. Is this mental health or is this real? Is this this person just snapped, or did this person have an actual psychotic break?
got a suggestion in the comments for Shutter Island.
Oh, I've seen it. Love it. Absolutely love it. Such a good movie.
Um, so, do you have other recommendations for media that does a good job portraying mental health?
Oh boy.
I didn't give you this question in advance. I'll call that out. I did not keep track time for this.
No, that I like to be thrown off my guard. I'm gonna I'm gonna have to think about that one. Maybe I'll comment on the thread and post some things. Uh, wait, I read a book that was so beautifully uh
Shannon Geyer says Identity.
Identity. Wait, is that the movie with who is that? Is that John Cusack or is that's not John Cusack?
I'm not sure. I don't know that one.
That one sounds familiar. Um, yeah, I'm gonna have to think on that one because and this show is gone off right now, but Empire has the actor portraying Andre on Empire does a phenomenal job of portraying, I believe he has schizophrenia. Um, it's in the very first season, because I kind of stopped watching it after a while, but in that very first season, he has this like intense psychotic break, and it is one of the most beautiful scenes because it's just he's hearing these voices, but he is also seeing things, and he just like snaps. And it is one of the most beautifully portrayed moments I've ever seen on TV. It's fantastic. I will have to find that scene and share it with some people because it is so good. I was like, wow. First of all, this guy is incredibly talented. Second, whoever wrote this scene needs all the awards because it was beautiful.
So I think I'm going to take a second here and I'm going to do our shout outs. First off, RS Theatrics, the producers of tonight's show. So we are doing a year-end fundraising drive right now. We have an anonymous donor who is matching the first $700 of donations, which you can still participate in. So if you donate today, you will be automatically have your donation doubled. And you will also be very much appreciated. We're doing a thing here for the people watching the live stream that if you donate at least $20 between now and the start of next week's live stream, you will be eligible to win the Darrious Varner prize package, which is taking care of yourself theme. We've got a journal, blank journal, and a water bottle.
Yes.
Healthy out there.
Hydrate.
It's like the opposite of the Adam Flores package. That was just news-based. There's a link in the Facebook feed for people who are watching on our Facebook live stream. And if you're watching this in recording on YouTube or our website, you can go to our website and select support RS Theatrics. And I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about what people can find on your social media while I drop the link to this link tree in the comments.
Awesome. So like she said, this is my link tree link. Here you will find my Instagram where listen, y'all, quarantine has made me dabble in a lot of things. So you'll get some makeup, you'll get some skincare, you will get some music, a little bit of everything. I'm actually about to roll out a whole new plan of um, YouTube content, which includes a mental health check Monday. So make sure that you hit the second one, which is my YouTube channel, to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Um, and then you can find my merch on my Redbubble. I'm not wearing one of my shirts right now, which is kind of a bad decision for me, but all of my merchandise is designed by me. It's sold through Redbubble. It all directly supports me and my music and my art. So I really appreciate if you guys would buy a shirt or a sticker or whatever you have. There's tons of stuff, sweaters, hoodies, all kinds of stuff. And then you'll link to my website, which is where you'll find all of my information about upcoming performances whenever that starts again. Hey, look, that's me. You'll also see a bunch of my niece just being adorable. And then the next thing is like 31 days of Halloween. So also on my link tree is links to my music. So I have 2 singles that came out this year. Most importantly, I Get to Be Magic and Witch's Brew, which is my spooky Halloween song that came out. And you can find those on iTunes, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Play, whatever music service you use to stream your music.
All right. So, lots of love in the comments. I don't know if you're looking at the comments.
I'm not. I should be. Hi, I love all of you.
We've got Jazz and Bree and
all of my favorite people in the comments.
Shannon and Shannon.
Hi, I love you.
Right. So, any last thoughts you want to throw out into the universe, or have we?
Yes. I as a budding content creator, theater maker, all-encompassing artist is just how I've been labeling myself these days, because I don't want to, not that labels are important, but I just like to say that I'm an artist because art is my life and my life is art. I want to encourage every person that is watching, either right now in the present or in the future, to never, ever stop. No matter what halts you, there might be a global pandemic right now, but there is so much that you can do to keep yourself mentally fresh. Always check up on your mental health. Always moisturize every day. And you get what you put. You get in what you put out. And even if you need to take a break, there are no obligations or limits to what you can do. So always be doing what you want to do, what makes you mentally healthy and mentally happy, and don't let nobody tell you otherwise.
I heard an excellent piece of advice from Patrisse Cullors, who is one of the founders of Black Lives Matter. Mm-hmm. She said that she was asked about, like, what do you do to outside of your work to rejuvenate your work? And she said, I hate the idea of stepping away for self-care, because if we're doing this work right, we should be getting the care there. Mm-hmm. That those are your people. Those are the people who are most suited to be propping you up and giving you that love. So if you find your people.
Yeah, when you find your tribe, that's one of the best things about A, being queer, and B, being a theater maker, is that you get to pick everybody gets to pick, but a lot of times being queer, we don't have the choice. So, we get to create our own family, that chosen family, and it's beautiful. I got a lot of family in the comments, apparently. I love y'all.
Yes. So excellent note to end things on. And I want to thank you for joining us. And
thank you for having me again.
It's been so much fun, even though we're talking about some serious issues. It's still nice to be able to engage. And
yes, definitely.
ideas out there. To everyone who is watching, this will be available archived on our Facebook page for people to watch in the future. We're going to put it on our YouTube channel. We're going to put it on our website. And you can also find our previous episodes there. And we're back here every Monday night at 7. Next week, we've got Erin Kelly, who we're going to be talking to about using theater to educate people on Native issues.
Yes, I love that.
Oh,
I will be tuned in.
Erin and I have already talked quite a bit, and we'll have trouble keeping it in the hour. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, so much, and we will hope to see you next week. Love to everybody.
Thank you. Bye.